Once each year, the dead leaves and withered branches were cleared from the pine forest. Maomao knew that a well-tended pine forest encouraged a certain kind of mushroom to grow. Right now, she held a small capped matsutake mushroom in her hand. Some people did not like the way they smelled, but Maomao loved them. Quartered matsutake mushrooms, grilled on a grate with a dash of salt and a squeeze of citrus, was her idea of heaven. It was a modest copse, but she found a convenient cluster of the mushrooms, so she put 5 of them in her basket. Should she eat them at the old fogey's place or in the kitchen? She could not eat them at the Jade Pavilion. There would be too many questions about where she had gotten the ingredients. They might not approve of a serving woman saying she had gathered the mushrooms herself from the grove, so Maomao went to see the doctor instead. He was very good with people, but not very good at his job. If he liked matsutake mushrooms, then all would be well. If not, she figured he would still be kind enough to overlook it. Maomao had by now completely won over the loach-moustached man. She also remembered to stop by Xirolan's place on the way. Xirolan was a very important source of information for Maomao. Maomao did not have many friends. When Maomao returned from Lihua's residence, she looked thinner than ever. This was from the effort of helping the consort. The other ladies in waiting undertook to plump her up. Maomao was happy about this. It showed she hadn't fallen out of the ladies' good graces despite having been with a rival consort for almost 2 months. However, it was nearly as frustrating as it was gratifying. She had a little basket. It began to bulge with the extra treats she received every time tea was served. Xirolan would never turn down something sweet. Her eyes would light up at the sight of whatever Maomao had brought her. She would be more than happy to take a short break, munching on sweets and chatting Maomao's ear off in equal measure. Now they sat behind the laundry area on a couple of barrels, talking about this and that. Stories of strange happenings made up the bulk of it, as usual. But among other things, Xirolan told Maomao, "I heard one of the palace women used a potion to make a hard-hearted soldier fall in love with her, and it worked." Maomao broke into a cold sweat at that. Probably it had nothing to do with me, right? Probably. Looking back on it, she realized she had never thought to ask who the love potion was for, but did it really matter? The palace meant the actual palace, not the rear palace. This meant it had happened safely outside. The palace proper had actual functioning men, so an appointment there was a popular prospect. Competition for these positions was fierce. Unlike the women who served in the rear palace, these men were elites. They had passed serious tests to gain their positions. It should be said that, when actual functioning men were absent, the rear palace could seem a rather more lonely assignment. It did not particularly matter to Maomao. When Maomao arrived at the medical office, she found the loach-moustached old man with a pale-faced eunuch she did not recognize. He was continually rubbing his hand. "Ah, just the young woman I wanted to see," the doctor said with his most welcoming smile. "Yes, what is it?" "This man has developed a rash on his hand." "Do you think you could whip up a salve for him?" Maomao thought those were not very becoming words for the man who was ostensibly the palace's doctor. She would expect him to do it himself, but this was nothing new. Maomao was content to go into the room full of medicine cabinets and get her ingredients. First, though, she set the basket down and produced the matsutake. "Do you have any charcoal?" she asked. "Oh ho, what fine specimens you found," the quack said jovially. "We will be wanting some soy paste and salt as well." She seemed to have found a winner. That would make things easy. The doctor all but danced out of the room on his way to the dining hall to find suitable seasonings. Perhaps if he put this much passion into his work. Sadly for the patient, he was left quite by himself. Maybe I will give him a consolation mushroom if he likes them, Maomao thought. She watched the disconsolate eunuch as she mixed the ingredients. By the time the quack returned with spices, a small charcoal grill, and a grate, she had a good thick ointment prepared. She took the eunuch's right hand and gently spread the ointment on the angry red rash. The salve was not the most pleasant-smelling thing in the world, but he would just have to bear with it. When she had finished, his previously pale face seemed to have regained some of its luster. "My, but she is a very kind young woman." Some of the serving women looked down on the eunuchs. They saw them as uncanny beings, neither women nor truly men, and they did not hide it in their expressions. "Isn't she, though? She is forever helping me with little things like this," the doctor said with a hint of pride. There had been times in history when eunuchs were treated as villains who lusted after power, but in fact, only a few of them had ever been like that. Most of them were calm and pleasant, much like these two. Not all of them were, though. An unwelcome face flashed through Maomao's mind, and she deliberately chased it away. They lit the charcoal, set the grate in place, then tore the mushrooms into pieces by hand. They left the mushrooms to cook. Maomao had helped herself to a small sudachi citrus from the orchard. Now they cut it into slices. When they started to smell the unique fragrance of cooking matsutake mushrooms, the fungus delicately blackened. They put it on dishes and seasoned it with salt and citrus juice. Maomao waited to take her first bite until she was sure the other two had started eating. The moment the older men took bites of it, they became Maomao's accomplices. She munched while the quack doctor chatted contentedly. He said, "This young lady has been all kinds of help to me. She can do just about anything, you know. She mixes up every type of medicine under the sun, not just ointments." "Huh, most impressive," the old man said. He sounded like he was bragging about his own daughter. Maomao was not sure she thought that was ideal. She suddenly found herself thinking about her father, whom she had not seen in more than 6 months. She wondered if he was eating properly. She hoped the expense of keeping his medicines stocked was not overwhelming him. It was just when Maomao was feeling this emotional pull that the quack had to go and say something especially tone-deaf. "Why, I do believe she can make any kind of medicine at all." Gah! But before Maomao could tell the old man to keep his hyperbole to himself, the eunuch sitting across from them said, "Any kind?" "Yes, anything you need." The doctor gave a triumphant little snort, which in Maomao's mind only confirmed his quackery. The other eunuch looked at Maomao with new interest. She was sure he had something on his mind. "In that case, might you be able to make something to cure a curse?" He was rubbing his inflamed hand pathetically. His face was once again pale. It had happened the night before last. He always picked up garbage as the last thing he did. He gathered all the litter and trash around the rear palace in a cart. Then he wheeled it over to the western quarter. There was a great pit there where the trash would be burned. Fires were typically not allowed after sunset. However, the air was damp and there was no wind, so it was deemed safe. He was granted permission to burn the trash. His subordinates pitched the trash into the pit. He helped with the work himself, wanting to finish the chore quickly. They moved the stuff from the cart into the hole a little at a time. Then something in the pile on the cart caught his eye. It was a woman's outfit. It was not silk, but it was certainly of high quality. It seemed a waste to get rid of it. When he held it up to inspect the item, a collection of wood writing slips tumbled out. There was a noticeable burn mark on the sleeve of the outfit that had been cradling them. What could this mean? But he knew his job wouldn't be done any sooner by puzzling over it. He grabbed the wooden slips one by one and tossed them into the pit. "And then you say the fire blazed up in unnatural colors?" "That's right." The old man's shoulders shook as if the very memory was horrible. "And you say the colors were red, purple and blue?" Maomao asked. "Yes, that's what they were," Maomao nodded. So this was the source of the rumors Xiaolan had reported to her that morning. Who knew something from the western quarter would make it all the way here? Apparently it was true what they said about rumors among women traveling faster than a swift-footed scander. It must be the curse of the concubine who died in a fire here many, many years ago. "It was wrong of me to set a fire at night. I know that now. That is why my hand got this way." The rash on the eunuch's hand had appeared after the incident with the fire. He was pale and trembling as he said, "Please, miss. Make me a medicine that can cure a curse." The man looked at her beseechingly. She thought he might fling himself face first onto the reed mat. "There is no such medicine." "How could there be?" Maomao said coldly. She got up and started rifling through the drawers of the medicine cabinets, quite ignoring the old man and the doctor. Both of them looked thoroughly out of sorts. Finally, she set something down on the table. Several varieties of powder and bits of wood were present. "Is this the color you saw in that fire of yours?" Maomao asked. She placed the bits of wood among the charcoal embers. When they were burning, she took a teaspoon and scattered some of the white powder into the flames. The fire became red, or perhaps this. She added a different powder and the flames turned blue-green. "I can even do this." She took a pinch of the salt they had put on the mushrooms and tossed it into the flames. The fire then turned yellow. The two eunuchs watched her astonished. "Miss, what is this?" the flabbergasted doctor asked. "It's the same principle as coloured fireworks. The colours change depending on what you burn." One of the visitors to their brothel had been a fireworks maker. He was supposedly sworn never to share the secrets of his craft, but in the bedroom, trade secrets became simple pillow talk. And if a restless child happened to be listening from the next room, no one would know. "What about my hand then? Are you saying it is not cursed?" the old eunuch asked, still rubbing the afflicted appendage. Maomao held out some of the white powder. "If this stuff gets on bare skin, a rash can result, or perhaps there was lacquer on the wooden strips. Who knows? Are you prone to rashes to begin with?" Now that you mention it, the eunuch went as limp as if his bones had left his body. Relief was visible on his face. There must have been some substance like these on the wooden strips he had handled the previous day. That was what had caused the coloured fire. That was all, not some curse or devilment. Where were all these mysterious substances coming from, though? Maomao's ruminations were interrupted by the sound of clapping. She turned to discover a slim figure resting in the doorway. Superb. When had this most unwelcome guest arrived? It was Jinchi, standing there with the same nymph-like smile as always. Chapter 15, Covert Operations. When Maomao and Jinchi arrived at their destination, she found that he had brought them to the office of the matron of the serving women. The middle-aged woman was inside, but she quickly left the room when Jinchi spoke. To be honest, Maomao did not want to be alone with this creature. It wasn't that Maomao hated beautiful things. But when something was too beautiful, one began to feel that even the smallest flaw was like a crime, unforgivable. It was similar to how a single scratch on an otherwise perfect, polished pearl could cut the pearl's price in half, and even though the exterior might be lovely, there remained the question of what was within. And so Maomao found herself looking at Jinchi as if he were a bug crawling along the ground. She truly could not help it. She would rather simply admire him from afar. This is how Maomao, a simple commoner, truly felt. It was with some relief then that she greeted Gaoshun, who replaced the woman in the room. Despite his quiet nature, this servant eunuch had become a comfort to her recently. "How many colours like this are there?" Jinchi asked, arranging the powders he had brought from the doctor's chambers. To Maomao they were simply medicines, so there were likely more she hadn't discovered. But she said red, yellow, blue, purple and green, and if you subdivide them there are arguably more colours. I could not give you an exact number. And how would a wooden writing strip be made to acquire one of these colours? The powder could not simply be rubbed on it, it would just rub off again. It was all very strange. Salt can be dissolved in water to colour an object. I suspect a similar method would work here. Maomao pulled the white powder toward her. As for the rest, some might dissolve in something other than water. Again, this is outside my field of expertise, so I cannot be sure. There were many white powders. Some would dissolve in water and some would not. Others might dissolve in oil, for example. If some of the substance was to be impregnated into a writing strip, a substance that would dissolve in water seemed a reasonable assumption. All right enough. The young man crossed his arms and lost himself in thought. He was so lovely he could have been a painting. It almost seemed wrong for heaven to give a man such unearthly beauty. Then to have that man live and work as a eunuch in the rear palace was deeply ironic. Maomao knew that Jinchi had his hand in a great number of proverbial cookie jars within the rear palace. Perhaps something she said had caused the pieces of a puzzle to fall into place for him. He seemed to be trying to figure them out. Could it be a code? They had probably each come to the same conclusion, but Maomao knew better than to say so out loud. "The quiet pheasant is not shot," went the proverb. Which country had those words supposedly come from again? Feeling that she was no longer needed, Maomao made to leave. "Hold on," Jinchi said. "Yes, sir, what is it?" "Personally, I like them best steam-boiled in an earthen pot." She did not have to ask what they were. "Found me out, eh?" Perhaps it had been a little much to eat the matsutake mushrooms right there in the doctor's quarters. Maomao's shoulders slumped. She said, "I'll try to find some more tomorrow." It seemed her agenda for the next day was set. She would be going back to the grove. When he heard the clack that assured him the door was shut fast, Jinchi gave a hunted smile. His eyes were hard enough to cut diamond. He ordered his aide to find anyone who had recently suffered burns on their arms. He told him to start with anyone who had their own chambers and their serving women. Gaeshan had been sitting silently, as if waiting for this, and he nodded. As you wish, sir. He left the room and the matron came back in his place. Jinchi did feel bad chasing her out every time he showed up. I must apologize for constantly stealing your office out from under you. Oh heavens, not at all, the woman said, blushing as if she were many years younger than she was. Jinchi made sure the pleasing smile was still on his face. This is how women were supposed to react to him, but with her his looks were completely ineffective. Was this all his face could get him? Jinchi allowed himself the briefest tightening of his lips before his smile returned, and he left the room. A pile of woven baskets delivered by a eunuch awaited Maomao when she got back to the Jade Pavilion. They sat in the living area. The ladies in waiting were busily investigating the contents. She first thought they might be a gift from His Majesty, or perhaps they were a care package from home, but they did not quite look like either of those things. The clothing inside was too plain for consort Gyukayu to wear. There were also several duplicate outfits. Maomao noticed the other girls holding the dresses up to check the length. She guessed these must be new uniforms. Yinghua, one of the other ladies in waiting, said, "Here, try this on." She pushed one of the outfits toward Maomao. It consisted of a plain overgarment worn above a light red skirt. The sleeves were pale yellow and somewhat wider than usual. It wasn't silk, but it was an exceptionally fine brocade. "What's going on with these?" Maomao asked. The colors were subdued as befitted a serving woman. However, the design seemed eminently impractical. Maomao also frowned instinctively at the excessively open chest, something that had never featured on any of her other clothes. "What do you mean, what?" "These are our outfits for the garden party." "I'm sorry." The garden party. Maomao was thoroughly insulated by the indulgences of the more experienced ladies in waiting. Her only excursions outside of her regular regimen of food tasting and making medicine were going out to collect ingredients, chatting with Zyrolan, and taking tea with the doctor. Because of this, she did not hear much of what was happening among her superiors. She had begun to wonder if it was truly acceptable to earn a living at a job that seemed so easy. Yinghua, somewhat amazed that she needed to explain it, told Maomao what was going on. Twice a year a party was held in the imperial gardens. His Majesty, without a proper queen, would be accompanied by his concubines of the upper first rank. They would be accompanied by their ladies in waiting. In the rear palace hierarchy, Gyukayu held the rank of Gaifei or precious consort. Lihua bore the title Xianfei or wise consort. Two other women completed the group, the Defei or virtuous consort and the Shufei or pure consort. These four women comprised the upper first rank. Typically, only the virtuous and pure consorts would attend the winter garden party. But because of their children's births, Gyukayu and Lihua had both missed the most recent gathering. This time all four of them would be present, so they will all be there. That's right. We have to be ready to put on a good show. Yinghua was practically vibrating with excitement. This gathering of the most important consorts was a rare chance to get out of the rear palace. It would also be the debut of Princess Lingli. Maomao knew she could not claim inexperience as an excuse to avoid the party. Consort Gyukayu did not have enough ladies in waiting to do that already. Also, a food taster would be seen as very important at such a public gathering. Maomao's intuition nagged at her. It could be a bloodbath if they were not careful. Her intuition had an annoying habit of being right. I think you had better stuff that chest. I will help you add a bit around the butt too. Does that sound okay? I leave the matter in your capable hands. A certain voluptuousness was the standard of beauty here. Unfortunately, this meant Maomao's natural shape was somewhat lacking, a point Yinghua made inescapably clear. She was busy fastening belts and checking how the clothes fit. You will have to do your makeup as well. You could at least bother to hide your freckles every once in a while. Yinghua gave Maomao a naughty little grin, and Maomao replied with a scowl. Maomao was somewhat disheartened when Hongyang filled her in on how things would go at the party. The head lady in waiting had been at the previous year's spring event. She heaved a sigh and said, "I was so looking forward to not having to deal with it this year." When Maomao inquired whether there was anything particularly bad about it, Hongyang explained that there was simply nothing to do. The ladies in waiting simply stood around the entire time. There was one dance performance after another, then singing was accompanied by a two-stringed erhu. After that, food was presented and eaten. Finally, the girls exchanged forced smiles and pleasantries with the various officials who were in attendance. And all of it was outdoors, where they would be exposed to the blowing, dry wind. The gardens were expansive, a testament to His Majesty's power. Even a quick visit to the toilet could take upwards of 30 minutes. And if His Majesty, the true guest of honor, remained resolutely seated, his consorts would have no choice but to stay sitting as well. Sounds like I'm going to need an iron bladder, Maomao thought.